My name is Rachel Hassan and I'll be your tutor for this session. In this session, we'll be looking at Introduction to Excel and we'll be covering understanding Excel interface, exploring workbooks, difference between workbooks, worksheets, and cells, and we'll be navigating between Excels and then looking at different keyboard shortcuts and how to use your mouse properly. Alright, so before we go further, what is Excel? Excel is a software is a spreadsheet software created by Microsoft and it is used to create and also to manipulate data. There are different things that can be done using an Excel worksheet. You can manipulate your data like I said earlier. You can also do some data management such as sorting, filtering, editing, formatting, and so on. And you can also work with formulas and functions. You can do your adding, your subtracting, taking of average, minimum, maximums. You can work with graphs and charts. You can do data analysis on Excel with tools such as pivot tables and other forecasting tools. And you can also do some customization. Excel is actually a really customizable interface and you can work with custom formulas, you can work with macros, and you can even automate your task using Excel. And for you to be able to do all of these things, that is why we have this course available. We'll also explain to you how you can organize your data, how you can analyze your data, and even visualize your data using different tools. All right, so let's go right into it. Now, this is what an Excel interface looks like. This right here is a worksheet, and you have different cells in a worksheet. You have your cells, these little boxes, these are all cells. The nomenclature of an Excel cell is named according to the row and the column number. So according to the column name and the row. So you have columns are arranged according to letters while the rows are labeled according to numbers. So you have column A, column B, column C, column D, and so on. And then you have row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, and so on. Now each of these cells they are named according to the column and the row on which they are located. So this particular highlighted cell is called D4 and this particular one here is called H7. Now if I even want to toggle through, I can just type say E5 and it takes me right to that particular cell. So this cell right here is called E6 and you have different groups that you can work with. You have different tabs. Right on this interface, we are on the home tab. So here you can see your clipboard where you can copy and paste things and you have your format painter. What format painter does is that it helps you to pass on the format of a particular cell into another cell. So the same way I have different formats here. Once I click on this format painter, it basically passes it on to the next one. And then you have your fonts, which helps you to see how you want your entries to look like. It could be bolded, it could be in italics, it could be underlined, and so on. And you have your alignment, which talks about how you want it to be arranged. You can either wrap your text if it's a long text in just one cell, or you could allow it to spill into the next text. And then you can also merge your cells. Instead of this being two, I can just merge it into one, and that works for you. And you have your number groups, which helps you to do accounting formulas, which helps you to do percentages, commas, and so on and so forth. And you have your styles group, which works with when you're working with tables and conditional formatting, which are things we'll still get into in the course of this training. And then we have different the cell group, which is if you want to insert a new cell, you want to delete a particular cell, format them in this format instead of just using shortcuts. And you have your editing group, which is talking about the sorting and filtering, finding and select, and so on. And when you come to your insert tab, you have a variety of groups under it. You have the pivot table, which is the table groups. You have the illustration groups. We have the apps, the charts, the spark lines, filters, links, and all of that. And the same with your page layouts. It's a group that has to do with how the page is, how you want it to be aligned, how you want it to look like, what you want to bring forward and you want to move back. And you have your formulas, which you have to use when you're working with functions and the likes. And you have your data, case you want to bring in data from external sources, you want to work on your connections, you want to remove duplicates and lots of other things you can do with them. And you have the review and the view. All right, so now this is basically all that there is to your Excel interface. And while you begin to work with your Excel, you begin to see different things. You begin to see other things that you did not even notice before. So do well to explore and see what works for you. All right, and moving on, we there are what we call workbooks, there are what we call worksheets, and we have seen what a cell is. And the difference between a workbook and a worksheet is that the whole of this Excel file is a workbook. A workbook is basically, say, a container that houses different worksheets. Now, this particular page that we are on is a worksheet. This is another worksheet. I can have a lot of worksheets in this particular workbook. Right now, I have three worksheets open. This is sheet 3, this is sheet 2, and this is sheet 1. All right, but all of these, they are all inside one workbook. So that is the difference between a workbook, a worksheet, and a cell. All right, moving on, we'll look at different functions, different shortcuts that you can use while working with Excel. As you move on, you'll be able to get familiar with all of these things and you see the beauty of them. Now, if you're looking at different subtopics, we have the navigations, which basically helps you to move back and forth on your sheet. On here, if I use my control and my arrow key, it takes me to the end of this particular row. And if I use my control and my down arrow key, it takes me to the last cell in this particular column. Now, if I use my control and my home key, it takes me back to the beginning of my column. And also, if you use your control and down key, yes, it takes you to the last line in that particular column. All right, so that is it for navigation. And also, if you want to move between sheets, instead of coming here to click one by one, you can just use your control and your page up or page down. Page up takes you to the sheet before where you are currently, while page down takes you to the sheet immediately after where you are currently. All right, so this is how you can navigate. You can see my arrow is still down here, so I'm not really moving my arrow, my mouse, but you can see that I am able to navigate back and forth with my navigation shortcuts. Now, if you want to selecting, you have use your shift key to select. Right now, I'm just pressing my shift and my forward arrow, and I am selecting down to the end. If I want to select downward, I just press my shift and my down arrow key. But if I want to select the whole column or the whole row based on where my active cell is, which in this case is row 1, all I do is just press my control, shift, and forward key and forward arrow, and there I have it. So if I do the same thing, control, shift, and down arrow, it takes me to the last active cell, and then when I press it one more time, it highlights the whole cell for me. But if I don't want to do that and I want to highlight the whole thing, what I do is just I do control A, and control A highlights every row and column where there is an entry first before highlighting the whole thing if you press it a second time. So if this cell, if I have just say 4 or 5 entries on this cell just to this point and I do control A, it's going to align, it's going to highlight just the rows, just the boxes where I had something. But when I do control A second time, it highlights everything. But if this worksheet is empty, or if it is an empty sheet like this, once I do control A, it highlights everything for me. All right, so that is it for selection shortcuts. And now for editing, you have your F2, which edits the active cell like this one. Instead of me trying to double tap to get into this cell, I can just do F2 and it goes into that cell for me to be able to edit it. If I do my control C, I am able to copy this particular cell, and then if I do my control V, I can paste it right here. Control X is going to cut it, and then control V would paste it again, but then I don't have it here anymore. Now control Z is going to undo that action, while control Y is going to redo that action. Control Z undoes the action, control Y reduce the action. Control Z, control Y. All right. So moving on, we have your formatting shortcuts. You have control B to make it bold, control I to make it into italics, control U to underline a particular text, and then control 1 to open a cell formatting dialog. Now, if I'm working with, say, lots of numbers and I don't want to be going up to the dialog button, dialog group, like this number group right here, I can just use my control one and it takes me directly to my format dialog box, and from here I can do what I want to do. All right, and then you have your control shift L, which brings in the um filter button right here. So I can decide that I want to filter this based on I just want to see a particular thing or not. And if I don't need this anymore, I can just do Control Shift L and it takes that box away. All right. And then moving on, you have your formulas. Now, if I have a particular formula, you say that the sum of 1 plus 2, and I have 3. Now, Control and your backtick is going to open that up for me. Now this is it opening up the formula that I had. I want to see exactly what I had in here. But if I don't want to see it anymore, you just press the same thing, control and your back tick, and it takes that back to the way it was. So this symbol right here that you can see, this is called a back tick. It should be below your exe, that's the escape button on your keyboard. And when you do alt plus and equal to, it gives you the sum of a particular selected cell. See, if I have 3 here and I have 5 and I have 5, so when I select all of these and I do alt plus, yeah, there you have it, or alt and your equal to sign, there you have it. So now I have my addition. Instead of me going through the stress of doing this, I can easily just do this and it gives me the very same thing. All right, and then you have other things that you can do with this, which is to you can save this worksheet. That's Control S. It's going to ask me what I want to save it as, but I want to save it on my computer. Let's say I just want to save it as, say, um, Excel file. Now that has been saved. All right, so if I just want to do Control S again, I don't have to do that a second time. Now, if I do Control N, it's going to open a new workbook for me. Now, you can see down here that I have only sheet 1, and because this is a new workbook, but I don't need it, so I'm going to close that. If you do Control O, it's going to open an existing workbook, but because I don't want to open one, I'm going to remove that. And then if you do Control P, it is going to print out this particular worksheet for you. Now, as you can see here, I have this particular worksheet and not the entire workbook that is being printed. All right. And finally, when you do your Control F, it is going to find and replace. Now, if I just wanted to find something for me, all I have to do is just include it in this find part. Say I wanted to find action for me. It's going to look for it, and then there I have it in my sheet too. But if I wanted to find and replace action, I can just come here and then just replace it with action full stop, and then I replace. And right here you can see that it has replaced that particular cell. But if I press replace all, it's going to replace everything for me. All right, so now that is what those are the functions and the shortcuts that you can play around with in Excel. And also I would like us to know that this list, it is not exhaustive, so you are going to still have other functions and other shortcuts that you can work with, but these are just the basic functions that you would encounter more often when you're working with your Excel sheets. So that will be all for this class, and we have been able to understand how the interface of Excel works. We've been able to see the difference between a workbook, a worksheet, and a cell, and we've also been able to see different shortcuts using our keyboard and also working with our mouse. So thank you so much, and I will see you in the next class.